Hi, this is Vermin Supreme, and I would certainly like to inform you that I never, ever listen to, nor do I plan on listening to, None Taken.
Dude, I just learned this earlier this week, and it blew my fucking mind. This is not breaking news, so whatever the opposite of that fish is. But
Okay.
can you name the first two people to start spreading the word that Osama bin Laden had been taken out? His death, Osama bin Laden's death. Now, the obvious answer is Barack Obama came on the television and told us. But if you remember, these are like the early days of Twitter, Facebook's. Rumor was going around that that's what it was going to be, but it wasn't like now where it was like certainly leaked and we all knew it. It was still like, I think that's what he's going to say when he comes on the TV. And like it was broken on the TV. You didn't watch this on your phone. Like we all gathered around the television.
Yeah, to see Obama came on and he said,
yeah, ladies and gentlemen, we got him. So who were, I don't think you'll get the first person. I don't think you're going to guess who the second person was. Take a wild guess. I'll give you a hint. It was a celebrity. It's a huge celebrity.
David Letterman.
No. Where's that? I have it. I don't think we stopped the show to play my Letterman clips.
You'd like to buy a monkey?
There we go. No.
Celebrity that's on Twitter heavy. It was like
you're not gonna guess it.
I'm not gonna
do
one more try. Okay.
Yeah.
Trying to think of this is 2000. What year was this? 2000.
He's been famous forever.
Okay.
You look like you're trying to say Barack Obama.
Jennifer Aniston. I don't
know. I just said he.
So he. God damn it.
It was Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
What the fuck?
Yeah. So a Navy intel officer leaked it from official sources, and then the second person on Earth to publicly report the news of Osama bin Laden's death was 47 seconds later was Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
How? I mean, maybe he has some like soft guys that are friends of his, and maybe
actually that makes us that. You know what? I didn't really think that critically about this. Yes, that could almost certainly why. Now that you say it's not as much of a mystery, but yeah. Star of Fast and Furious, Alan, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
Right, and the Mummy,
and what?
And the Mummy.
Was he in the Mummy?
Yeah, wasn't he?
In the first ones? One of the he was in one of those Mummy spinoffs, probably.
He was the Scorpion.
He was in Star of the Rundown.
He was in the Scorpion King. He was the Scorpion King.
That's one of the spinoffs, right?
Yeah.
No Brendan Fraser in that one though. I don't know. I like saying Fraser though, because people say Fraser still.
Yeah.
I'm gonna start the show with this clip.
Okay.
Did you know there was foul language in The Sound of Music?
No.
The hills are alive with swear words, Alan.
Okay, hold on. They're talking about the movie The Sound of Music, and this person says, I told my mom to watch out for the Reverend Mother calling Maria a bleep face, and she hasn't stopped laughing since. Okay, roll the clip.
Maria, our abbey is not to be used as an escape. What is it you can't face?
Y'all let me in this damn house.
Should we hit record?
Yeah. 1, 2, 3. All right, you ready?
I am ready. Are you recording?
Yes. All right. Well, you want to start a show?
Let's start a show.
That podcast is filling your head with garbage.
No, that's taken there.
Well, it sounds like none taken.
Ask your mama, she'll say the same thing. I got all the ways, I just ain't got the means. Boom!
To the Friday Headlines Roundup edition of Not Taken. Hell yeah. Every week, my good friend Alan wrangles up the headlines, and we talk them at you. These are our credentials. I listen to 13 hours of podcasts a day, and Alan watches 3 3 hours of cable news, which is a lot. That's a lot. You might be like, only 3 hours every day, 3 hours.
lot.
You don't have to. So you don't have to. And now, get ready to take a sledgehammer to the culture war echo chambers. But first, as is tradition,
So, another Friday is upon us. What will you be doing, Smithers? Something gay, no doubt. What? You know, lighthearted, fancy-free. Mothers, lock up your daughters. Smithers is on the town.
Exactly, sir.
Exactly, sir. All right, and whether you go by sir or ma'am or young lady or I guess it's young man, lad, fancy lad. You're one of those fancy lads. If you're
Berries and cream. Berries and cream.
you want to toss 3 shekels or I don't know what the shekel to dollar ratio is, but $3 worth of shekels our way on the old inner tubes. Going over to nonetakenpod.com. For the low price of $3, you can get a front row seat to all the fun. You can watch the videos from every show we do. We also do a hidden track before every episode. It's usually like 25 to 45 minutes long. It's a bunch of bonus content. Usually it's stuff that, come Thursday when we're recording this, I'm like, this can't wait till we record next Tuesday. Let's get some more shit out there. That way we don't make those episodes. That's how we keep those episodes from being 3.5 hours. I bet you've been appreciating those 2.5 hour shows. So you get a lot of extra stuff when you sign up for the low price of $3 a month. If you want to be a bit of a fancy lad, you can bump yourself up to $9 a month. If you go to the $18 a month level, the Culture Warrior level, I will send you a Culture War veteran t-shirts, but you have to DM me. There is no way to do that automatically. Also, if you're on Patreon via iPhone, log in through the browser to subscribe, then either re-download or go back into the app. If you do it through the app, Apple will rat fuck you out of 30%, an additional 30% charge on top of it.
Yeah, lame.
Don't want you to do that because you're already being generous with your hard-earned money,
Yeah, absolutely.
And Alan's got a couple more things to tell you about.
Yeah, also, if you're on the Patreon, there is a special private RSS feed where you can get all that stuff downloaded to whatever podcast player you use. If you prefer just to have the audio. If you prefer just to have the audio version as opposed to watching the video. I know a lot of you guys.
No,
like
I say
that.
nerd, but it was people in the Patreon asking how we could do that, and Alan stepped right up on that.
Yeah, so it's right there for you. If you join the Patreon, you just click on it, you get the link and put it in your player, you're good to go. Everything you need for None Taken is at nonetakenpod.com. We got a merch store over there. You can get some Alan's Edging Service hoodies.
Shout out to Brian for getting one of those.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, his hoodies, long sleeves, and t-shirts. There's mugs that we say cunt in this house because
I'm a cunt.
And we what else do we have there? We got,
all our socials are there.
We got an obscure shirt that says I love country music and it has Marjorie Taylor Greene's face on it.
Yes. We do have that as well.
Also show logo stuff, everything's there.
All that stuff is there. As well as don't forget to support the people that support us. Slickestdigital.com for all your SEO and marketing needs. Slickestdigital.com.
Nice guy Slickets. Had a great time hanging out with him at the wedding. Alan,
hell yeah.
Loved hanging out with Slickets at the wedding.
Hell yeah. What is up, everybody? Happy Friday. We made it to another weekend. The weekend's here. Have a can of fucking beer. Let's go. Or
Steve Weisers. I got 2 of them here, man.
Steve Austin over here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cold Stone Steve Austin. That's fine.
We just like down pints of ice cream.
Yeah, dude, I was at Culver's today. I was so tempted to get a pint of frozen custard, but I was like, well, that's not gonna live in my van with 100 degrees Tennessee heat.
Yeah, you just have to pound it there.
Culver's, man. I had a double deluxe at Culver's and I felt terrible for the rest of the day. Like, I love how it tastes, but there is something about Culver's that just makes me feel sick later.
I don't think I've ever had Culver's.
They're Wisconsin based, I believe.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, they're good. They have them in Oklahoma. That's where I first had them.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we got some headlines to talk at you.
We should do some lines.
Let's do some lines.
Right.
The FBI said that it still has not determined a motive for the gunman who attempted to assassinate former President Trump, noting that he searched for events from both parties. So he searched for both Biden and Trump events. He also, on social media, he seemed to have some comments that were anti-Semitic. They're still trying to figure out.
I thought he wasn't on social media. Remember when they said that?
Well, they haven't released anything.
Social media.
They're not sure if it's him, is what the article said. He also was. He was.
I like how they're like, what kind of person? What kind of kid doesn't have a social media? I don't know. What kind of person thinks they're going to just kill a president a presidential candidate. You know, people are like, "Oh, come on, this guy's a plant. What kind of person doesn't have a social media presence in 2024?" I don't know. Type of person that crawls on top of a building with a backpack and tries to shoot the president in a crowd. Like, you're not starting things off with a normal human being.
Yeah, that's
By the way, I
point.
got yelled at for yelling when I was complaining about Trump. I'm like 99% certain it was a bot because he like started the Instagram account last summer. But I was like, what are you talking about? Like, yeah, I'm really sorry that I got passionate and upset about people disrespecting veterans. Like, how dare I? You're right. I should be much more measured while I complain about that. Touched a fucking wire with your favorite guy.
I got good feedback about that. So
good. Oh, I got more of that. Yes. Especially from I think our common friend there.
Yes. Yeah. Also, he Googled how far Oswald was from when he shot Kennedy, how far he was away.
That's hilarious.
Literally, like, Google that. So this is, this happened a month and a half ago at this point. I mean, if the FBI hasn't
figured
out,
say this, that sounds like something you'd plant on a hard drive. Be like,
Sure.
he Googled,
I mean, if
how come the gun jammed when the guy tried to kill Andrew Jackson? Like,
I mean, if the FBI hasn't figured it out by now, it feels like they're probably not gonna. But I don't.
You think so? That one can't, dude. You can't let that one fester, man.
I don't know. There's a headline in other news about Trump's reaction, by the way, which is fun. We'll get to that later. Anyways, you want to hit the next one?
Yeah, but I accidentally minimized my video and I can't look at my face while I talk. So
no.
Now who's the narcissist? A federal judge in Tejas temporarily paused a Biden administration program that seeks to allow spouses of U.S. citizens to obtain legal status without leaving the country if they have lived here for the past 10 years. So that's a reasonable thing. So what that means is if you're an illegal immigrant, I'm not changing our language to the way that the left likes pronouncing that. If you're an illegal immigrant and you married a citizen, they would like you're supposed to, under the current paradigm, leave the country and
apply.
Yeah, and wait 25 years until you can become a citizen, right? On paper, that sounds like, well, we should make that a law because otherwise, why would you call somebody illegal? They need to do things the right way. There are human beings involved in this. That person's married. They probably have kids.
Mm-hmm.
That person, chances are they've been here for 10 years, as in this example, which means they have 10 years, 20-year-old kids. Natasha muffs. My ex, their dad was an illegal. Well, yeah, he was an illegal immigrant. Mm-hmm. And there was a lot about him that I did not admire. And I don't need to drag that up. He was like this close to being a fucking deadbeat. But he stuck with the family. He was around. Nobody left, right? And his kids needed a dad.
Yeah.
And there was a time where he got a DUI. I'll say it. He got a DUI and they were trying to deport him. And it was like, dude, like, you put him in jail for a DUI.
Right. Make him pay the fine, make him do the things.
Yeah. But this family needs to have a father in this country. And yeah.
I mean, we're talking about people that have been here over a decade. Also, I don't know if you recall this, but we talked about it when Biden first signed it. But there was a very arbitrary date. It was like June 17th or something. It had to be filed before that date, or otherwise it wouldn't.
Oh, it's like the date that they changed the rules.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're not talking about somebody that just came here last week and decided to get married to get a green card, right? Like these are people that have a family here.
Also, my example is not the perfect example. Like, there's plenty of people that came here and didn't get DUIs. And
sure.
Yeah.
Now, I do understand the people that would say that this is legislating from the executive office and we shouldn't do that. However, Biden made a lot of sort of executive orders around immigration after the bipartisan immigration bill was crashed by Trump. And that was his response to that. Okay, well, if you're going to stop this bipartisan legislation,
if you want me to do something about immigration, here's what I'll do.
Here's what I got. So this is a temporary.
Unlike Trump, it was like, I got to be the person with the answers. I'm the one person, which is the reason me and you don't like him. Is that it's like, I don't want that. That's an authoritarian. That is like, I'm the one person to fix this. And if it goes through a failed judicial or congressional process, and you can identify that there is something fishy in that, like Trump telling people not to vote for it, then I mean, if you want to see change in that and people are asking for it, that's how you give it to them, right?
That's how you give it to them. X going to give it to him.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just kind of shitty all around. It's
Again, they've been here for 10 years. They've been paying taxes.
Mhm.
They're not citizens, so they don't get all the benefits.
Any
of
benefits? Yeah.
paying to. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a temporary stay. However, it can become permanent if the judge chooses to do that at a later date. We've seen sort of Texas courts do a lot of this. They did the same thing with the whole college loan bailout thing. That also came from Texas. Pretty activist judiciary over there, which is impacting.
Which is funny because they're like, don't mess with Texas, but we'll fuck with the rest of y'all stuff.
Right.
Like, it's like, what are you fucking doing? Like,
yeah. So they're impacting the entire rest of the country.
Yeah.
There are people that signed up for this.
I mean, that's how a United States system works, though. I mean, it's
maybe not ideally.
I mean, it's not comfortable, but I mean, it is. You know, they're laboratories of democracy. So
Sure.
I mean, I don't know. Right?
There are people that
you got to take the good with the bad.
There are people that signed up for this program who've already received like notices that yes, we're processing your your documents,
all on hold.
and now it's just
this is like those Afghan interpreters that weren't allowed
Yeah.
to the U.S. and they're just like fucksville. It's like, well, it's under the SIV or SI, whatever that 3-letter visa is, and they're like, yeah. Remember the thing that sucked about that so much is that there were people that were about to make it out of Afghanistan, and then COVID hit, and then all of that got shut down.
Mhm.
And then as COVID relaxed, we pulled out of Afghanistan, and those people that were at
left
the
them
very
hanging hung out to
two
dry.
people from the line,
Yeah. All right. Mexican President Lopez Obrador put diplomatic relations with U.S. and Canadian embassies on pause.
Huh?
After criticism of proposed judicial reforms. So,
dude, their transition time period is fucking wild. He's not president anymore. I mean, this is like Joe Biden being like, "Hey, I'm still president, but I'm not running." I heard Ziegler complaining about that. He's like, "Nobody talks about how we don't know who the president is." Like, no, we know who the president is.
We do, yeah.
He's just a lame duck president. Like,
I think he has 3 weeks left in office, something like that.
Like,
Lopez, yeah. So on pause, it's in quote marks in the headline. There's a reason for that.
Oh, okay.
That's not like official foreign relations terminology. There's not a thing that means. And he's actually done this before when he didn't like the way the U.S.
was talking about like the cartels and stuff, or what?
Yeah, was meddling with sort of what he thought was Mexican sovereignty.
Yeah, I mean, I don't blame him for that.
Yeah, I don't either. So when he says on pause, it doesn't really mean anything. There was somebody in the Foreign Service of the U.S. had come out pretty explicitly against their proposed judicial reforms. So essentially, the judicial reforms that they're proposing are that judges be elected to office, and the concern is that would be the judiciary would be very political and no longer sort of apolitical as they want them to be. So that was the concern. And
I'm apolitical.
Are you apolitical? You're political nomad? Yeah, political nomad media.
That's a play on I'm asexual predator. No, I'm not though. I was, damn it.
Somebody isolate that.
Don't. No. That came on the heels of a pun I already had, which is, you know what else is on pause?
What?
The scent of Fritos. If you smell a dog's paws,
you've said this before.
Yeah.
All right. I don't have much more to say about that, actually.
Well, you probably had more, but I talked about pause. The Pentagon said that an oil tanker in the Red Sea attacked by Houthi rebels appears to be leaking oil amid environmental hazards. So if this entire oil tanker did leak, it would be like 10 times worse than the Exxon Valdez. It's just in the fucking Red Sea, so who gives a fuck, right? I mean, there's not little sea lions and otters holding hands covered in slimy mud oil and all the ducks, and they got to clean them with the Dawn soap. You know, they're just like the Middle Eastern fish. Who gives a fuck, right? But all that aside, I'm joking. I'm being callous.
Yes.
I was watching Peter Zion video yesterday where they said that of all of the shit that the Houthis are able to do, they still don't do it well, because if anybody else hit this oil tanker, it would have penetrated the hull and definitely leaked. Like, you know, the Exxon Valdez ran into a rock. Like this, they got hit by a fucking missile that the Houthis make, and it's like, ooh, we dented it. I think it's leaking. Like,
so this tanker has 1 million barrels of oil on it.
That's a lot of
they're not sure it's leaking. However, we do know there at least 5
It
different
sure
fires.
looks like it's leaking, but that
There's
might
at least 5 different fires on board.
okay.
They got the crew off safely, but because of the threat posed by the Houthis, they're still being pretty cautious about trying to deal with this boat. Um, the Houthis have so far sunken 2 vessels and taken a third one. This is a problem. And the U.S. response has been to missile strike Houthi locations, things like that, but doesn't seem to really stop them or even given them pause. So
Pause? Like free
pause
does?
like free does.
Okay.
So yeah, this there's just so much conflict in the world, it's hard to keep track of all of it. But this is a big deal. That's a huge supply, that's a corridor.
It's his.
It is, yeah.
Except, like, if we took it seriously, we could stamp it out. I mean, the only reason the war in Yemen lasted so long for the Saudis is because the Saudis are probably the least competent military in that region.
Mm.
They're the most funded because of us, but they're just so bad at doing military that, like, I mean,
Well, they're most funded because of oil.
yeah,
Yeah.
but like and us, remember, don't
Yeah.
forget. Who?
Never
What?
forget.
Who died? Who? I can't hear you about who died. We just sold a bunch of money to the Saudis. A journalist? They chopped up a journalist. The Saudis chopped up a journalist. I can't hear you over the helicopter, but we just sold them billions of dollars of military equipment. That's almost an exact quote of Donald Trump in like 2020, 19?
Yeah, sounds about right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they get all the cool toys, but they don't know how to fucking use any of that shit. And I don't know shit about Dick, but all I know is the people that do, that I pay attention to, are like these guys. Like they kill a bunch of people and spread cholera in Yemen, but like they just don't know how to effectively like stamp out an insurgency. Not that we do, but I think we do a little bit better.
Yeah.
That said, I don't think we need to take the gloves off. I think that the effect of all of this ultimately, like when you say this is a problem, here's the problem. Reinsurance for insurance companies will go up because all of the insurance that we buy, home, auto, what is it?
Life.
Home, yeah. Is that the bundle?
Home auto life. Yeah.
Okay. If you get your home, auto, and life from Geico, bundle it together, you can save some time. Whatever. I'm getting my, it's general. Go to the general and save some time. If every place that we buy insurance from, they all have something called reinsurance that insures them. That's the same thing with shipping companies, right? Like, so the insurance on shipping companies is going up and up and up. And that's going to cause our insurance to go up. That's going to be the effect of this. We're going to see this in our bottom line and what we pay for insurance. And that's going to be the cost of it and some supply chain disruption.
Well, also cost of goods just generally. And then not to mention the environmental impacts as well. Not just of the oil.
Alan, what is it? A bunch of Moses people, or like there's a bunch of pharaohs under there, right? It's the Red Sea.
Not just the
oil
joke.
That's a good Bible joke,
That
Alan.
is a good Bible joke. Okay. Not just the potential oil leak, but also the impacts of not having that supply route. You have to go around the Horn of Africa. Yeah. So it's a problem. All right, let's move on. Let's see. It's me. Israel launched a large-scale military operation across
this shit, dude.
Multiple cities in the West Bank. Palestinian officials said that at least 9 Palestinians, who Israel said were all armed militants, have been killed. This is the most.
They've been doing raids in there and escalating the raids, but this is like they're like there now. They're like,
this is the most intense fighting in the West Bank since the second Intifada. So pretty big deal.
I get my Intifadas confused. Is that 2006 or is that like?
Yeah, that's the 2000s one. Yeah. So the UN is calling for, saying this is a terrible thing. They need to pull back. Israel doesn't seem to really care. And
shocked.
Apparently hostilities have sort of slowed down from the initial pace that they were taking, but they're still there. It's still a big deal.
Yeah. Dude, I mean, I get this is an oversimplification. I get what's going on in Gaza. Like, I get, because I lived through 9/11 and America's response to that. Like, I get what's going on in Gaza. And I wish they would handle it differently, but I also understand why they're doing that. I don't understand it. I understand seeing red and the way that they're handling Gaza. I don't understand, because the whole point of the West Bank is like, Israel should be able to say, look at how we treat people in the West Bank. We're mad at the Hamas militants in Gaza. You should be able to point at that and be like, of course we're not doing a genocide. Like, but if you're like killing Palestinians in Gaza, like what, like,
Yeah, I agree. However, the next headline might restore some hope in
French? The French?
number 6.
The Israeli?
Yeah.
The Israeli military said it rescued another. There's a lot of controversy around this. I hope you know that because I zone out during anti-war radio and I didn't really hear it. Anyways, the Israeli military said it rescued another hostage taken during the October 7th attacks by Hamas. This is its 8th rescue from a southern Gaza tunnel in a complex operation. I don't know if you know more about this. Like I said, when I listen to anti-war radio, it's just Dave DeCamp being like, here's a dead baby. Let's talk about that for 2.5 minutes. And like when this one came up, I know he said that like families of the person or the person themselves sort of like contradicted Israel's being like that Israel's take on how they were treated or something. I don't know. I shouldn't have opened this can of worms because I can't complete the can of worms. I'm not going to eat all these worms. I'm not a bird.
Okay. So the person that was rescued was part of the minority Bedouin Arab nationality that resides within Israel. He has 2 wives and 11 children, which I don't know why that's particularly important.
That's too many wives.
But that, they're
want an extra wife. No, I just like
I wouldn't.
I mean, it's enough love from one wife. Is what I meant.
That's totally what you meant.
Jesus.
Hi, Tosh. But no, so this is multiculturalism at its best. They kind of have learned from previous rescue attempts that when they go in, they have to sort of be aware that likely these areas are like booby trapped. There's explosives, there's things like that to kind of draw them in. So they found this guy by himself in this
sounds like a trap. Yeah,
in this tunnel.
Hi, it's just me over here.
They got him out. He, at least according to the reporting I read, was very happy and pleased that they got him out. He'd been there for 326 days, which is like we forget how long this conflict has been going on.
Not if you listen to anti-war radio, they tell you.
Okay, all right. There are still like 130 approximately hostages that they believe Hamas has. The estimates are that
hostages, right?
The estimates are that 30% are already dead of those that remain. So yeah, we need a ceasefire and a hostage exchange, but we'll see.
No, let's just go kill a bunch of people in the West Bank.
Yeah, or they could do that. All right. French authorities preliminarily charged Telegram CEO Pavel Durov with complicity in the spread of sexual images of children and other crimes on the messaging app amid a broader probe. He was freed
the French.
He was freed on bail, but banned from leaving the country. He does have French citizenship. He has like 5 different citizenships around the world. Yeah. So what the company is saying is that he can't be held responsible for what other people are doing on his platform.
No, totally.
It seems like pretty bad stuff that's happening on that platform that they're not policing at all. So not just
but like, come on though. Wait, is that your take on this? Like, you're taking, I don't. You know what? Let's argue. Like, are you taking an anti-free speech side on this?
Yeah, I think that a platform has a responsibility to deal with stuff like this.
You want to extend that to the end of that thought?
Sure.
Like, do you want that with Facebook and Twitter? And oh no, we have a First Amendment. It's different. They're French.
Well, Facebook has like how many thousands?
Mark Zuckerberg should be held accountable every time they pull down child pornography.
No, they should be held accountable if they're not doing it. No, okay, the French government.
So if the French can find an instance, or if Trump or the Kamala Harris administration can find an instance that hasn't yet been pulled down, then they should arrest Mark Zuckerberg tomorrow.
All the reporting on this particular platform is that France specifically, but other countries as well, have reached out to them and said, you need to take this.
Oh, do you mean when he reached out to him and asked him if they could base Telegram out of Paris instead of Qatar?
No.
You talk about that when he had lunch with this guy like 4 years ago?
So wait, hold on. Let me finish my point, and then you can do your thing. So they reached out to them and asked them to deal with this content, and they got no response. They didn't do anything, didn't even respond.
Yeah, because he said, fuck off. This is my platform. There are people on here doing things I might not like, but like
so you're saying
it's an encrypted platform.
The platform has no responsibility whatsoever
for the people that are using it. No, you should go after the people that are using it.
I don't know, man. I understand it's a fine line
put
to
myself
walk.
into a corner there, but like, and maybe I don't mean that entirely, but like, I think that this is to go after the head of the platform. Like,
The
no,
platform is completely unresponsive to any requests.
see, that's the thing. I think that this is all a cover because they wanted to bring him in there so they can get backdoor access to this platform because it's not as secure as they act like it is.
It's definitely not. I mean, part of the reason he left Russia was trying to do that to his previous social media platform.
I think that this is all an elaborate ruse, Alan. Clever attempted. What is it?
Clever attempt to trick me.
Yeah. I think this is all a ruse where they were like, look, we can't let you out here without charging you, but we're going to make a deal. And they got some deal where the French, because if the French can get access to everything on Telegram is used by the Russian military to communicate
Sure.
military planning things. So like,
There's certainly an angle there.
yeah.
No, I think it's a very fine line to walk, but I think if you have a platform
if it's a fine line to walk, this is a horrible precedence to set.
I mean, a lot of other countries are pointing at this and being like, especially authoritarian countries, are like, well, we censor social media in Russia, so if you're going to do it too, cool. Like, essentially,
what I mean, like,
yes, I understand
walk
that.
right into that, right? Like,
that's a propeller you don't want to walk.
And if I'm going to be really specific, I don't think it should be the CEO. I think it should be the heads of the department within that organization that you can. Obviously, an organization like this doesn't have like whatever Twitter had, like the health and safety or whatever, right? But like, if there's anybody that's like monitoring anything, those are the people you should arrest. This is a fucking stunt. And I think it's a stunt so they can get that guy to tell them how to get into their shit.
I don't think he will.
I mean, he might have, and he's going to drop the charge, and then they'll, find a way to weasel out of the charges. I'm shocked they charged him. They had a certain amount of time to charge him, and I thought it was just going to last.
Yeah, they had like 5 days or something like that, I think, with him. Yeah, since
habeas corpus.
Right.
All right. It's not habeas corpus. It's not French, but that's what that means, right? Where you have a time period before you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I don't have anything more spicy to say about that other than I default to the side of not charging CEOs for what people do on their platform. And if that means that I'm making a mistake, I'd rather make that mistake than charge CEOs for what people do on their platform.
And I guess my response would be, I agree with you unless the CEO or of said company
completely stonewalls them, like that you're
completely abdicated all responsibility. Like, you can't do that. Like, the buck has to stop somewhere, and if a platform is going to completely just ignore anything that's happening on it, that's unacceptable. I don't know that necessarily arresting somebody.
So you win in this argument because I don't know the actual facts about how much they actually did what you just said. That
I mean, and I'm basing all that on just reporting I've read. I don't have hard facts,
But also that's reporting around the lines of people that probably think this is a good thing to do.
Perhaps.
Okay. All right.
Perhaps. So I guess if those facts are accurate, then I would stand my ground. If they're not, then I wouldn't.
Yeah.
All right. Go ahead and you're up.
Ukraine reported further territorial gains in Russia's Kursk region, now controlling 100 settlements as Russia continues heavy airstrikes into Ukraine. I watched a Peter Zion video the other day where the way things are going, you could definitely see Ukraine continuing its advance and capturing of territory in that part of Russia. However, Russia's counter response to this is to go after this city that starts with a P in Ukraine. I don't remember how to say it. And it's like
something like that. Yeah.
And that area is a confluence of 7 rail networks or rail lines. And if Russia can control that, then not only do they hold that hub, but they can hold where things go from that hub. And it becomes its own logistics nightmare for Ukraine within their own country while they're doing this. And the only way that they could fight back against Russia on that specific area within Ukraine is to send their best troops there, and all their best troops got trained up so they can do this Kursk incursion.
So I'm going to read this next headline, and I'll go back to something that stuck out to me in this article of the headline you just read. Ukraine and Russia exchanged 230 prisoners of war in a deal mediated by the UAE, 115 from each side. All of the Russian POWs that were sent back were Russian soldiers who were captured in this Kursk campaign.
Oh, wow.
There is a specific line.
Like how negotiations start.
There's a specific line in this, the headline you read. It says, okay, At a news conference, President Zelensky announced his intention to present the U.S. with a plan to end the war. It will include consideration of the diplomatic and economic fronts, he said.
Whoa.
Now, I hadn't heard either of those things until I put this together. Dude, I don't
listen
know.
to a lot of podcasts. I haven't heard anybody saying
Yeah.
that.
I'm like,
I am tragically online. What's that? Very online.
Very online. So I read that, Zelensky saying that, and I read the next headline, the exchange hostages, and I'm like, wait a minute. Is the Kursk invasion just a fucking Hail Mary to try and end this war and say, look, we'll give you some territory, some people back. You give us some territory, some people back.
I mean, that's what we said last week. We're like, its best scenario, it's to give Ukraine something, because until then,
bargaining
they had nothing to bargain with. Yeah. Just please, daddy, don't do this.
Right. I don't know, man. After that kind of really stuck out when I read that headline. So
you can have, except the Dnieper's back in the open. No, not the Dnieper. The LDR. What's that D word in LDR?
The Donbass?
Donbass. The Donbass is back in the open, though. I mean, there's like heavy fighting there. A lot of territory in the back. It's back on the table. It's a battleground state, Alan.
Yeah.
It's
practically Georgia over there.
Yeah, exactly. No.
Different Georgia.
Different Georgia. Okay.
Different Georgia.
10. Oh, when we were talking about their Kursk invasion, part of the success they've had is destroying these oil storage facilities that Russia has in that area. And they have like man, it's a huge percentage. Like, I forget which flip side of it, either 30% or 70%. Let's go with the low number, right?
It's still a massive amount.
Is on fire. And it's just like, think about those big cylinders that contain oil outside of refineries that you've driven past, and they got the little flame up on top, right?
Yeah.
Like if there's 100 of them there, 30 of them are on fire and they have no ability to put them out, and the fires are spreading to the rest of them. They can't put the fire out, and they can't use this oil. They can't distribute this oil. This is also the staging area for everything they're doing in northeastern Ukraine.
Right.
So this has been very effective at limiting Russia's ability to wage its war.
Yes.
Finding a way to settle that. And if we could just do what we keep saying with Israel, like if we can trick them into stop shooting, maybe it'll be harder for them to decide to start shooting again.
Right. Yeah.
And in the meantime, you can get yourself strong, like settle down, like peace will be good for everybody.
Agreed. All right. 10.
Separatist militant attacks on police stations. Separatist military attacks on police stations, railways, and highways in Pakistan's Balochistan province left at least 73 people dead. You left this one in. Why do we care about these Pakistani attacks?
I left it in because I hadn't really heard anything about it before.
Yeah.
So there's a
that's why I'm downplaying.
There's a BLA. It's called the Baloch Liberation Army. They want they're a separatist movement, essentially. They think that the government, the Pakistani government, is exploiting all the resources in their region. They're allowing China to come in and mine and build a port.
Wow.
Meanwhile, the whole region is in utter dire poverty. And so they're like, you're exploiting all this stuff. You're letting China in. We don't want to be a part of that. And so they've been around for quite a while, but I'd never heard of them before. And I guess they've done attacks previously, but this was a pretty big one. So they tried to take out infrastructure. They use suicide bombers in other parts of the area as well.
Remember when Bill O'Reilly tried to get everybody to say homicide bombers?
No, I don't actually remember that.
It's like they're suicide bombers, but they're killing people.
They're homicide bombers. Okay, all right. So this is quite the distinction there. Yeah. So I left it in because I hadn't heard about it.
I appreciate it. I downplayed it because I hadn't heard of it, but I was joking, and I'm glad you included shit like that. I don't see anything about Sudan though, Alan. Do you have anything to hear about Sudan?
I don't.
Yeah, that's probably because you're racist.
No, we've talked about Sudan plenty on
this show. we do more than the media does.
Yes, for sure. All right.
Nobody talks about knife attacks though, Alan.
A knife attack at a festival in Solingen, Germany, killed 3 people and injured 8. Do you know why I know Solingen? Because they make really good knives there. Actually, I just realized that.
Is that
'Cause
where
when we-
like Gerber's from or
Yeah,
something?
no. When we sold Bed Bath, when we sold knives at Bed Bath.
Oh, is that where Hinkle's from?
Wusthof, I think, is from there.
Wusthof. Okay.
Yeah.
And I know my knives. You want the full tang, Alan.
The full tang is important.
Full tang. You want full tang, and you want the handles riveted onto the full tang.
Yes.
I see Natasha wants to get these cute knives because they're pink all the time.
And don't use those shitty sharpeners they sell you. They just fuck up your edge.
Of course. Natasha's always like, look at how cute these knives are. They're pink. And I'm like, well, first of all, they're not made of high carbon steel. Second of all, the tang is at the beginning of the handle. That's
Yeah.
like
They're probably
fucking-
ceramic if they're pink.
No, they weren't. They weren't ceramic.
Oh, okay. That'd be worse. Okay, we're digressing in a very serious headline here. Okay, so all right, I'm gonna start over. A knife attack at a festival in Solingen, Germany, killed 3 people and injured 8. The Islamic State claimed responsibility, though without evidence, and police detained a 26-year-old Syrian suspect. He also injured 8 other people, some of them critically, although they seem like they're going to make it at this point.
Okay.
So scary shit. One of the interesting things was in this article was the vice chair, German's vice chair, was suggesting that perhaps
Vice Chancellor or Vice
Chancellor. I'm sorry, yes, Vice Chancellor was suggesting that they needed better knife control regulation. And I read that and I was just like,
they had assault knives.
I kind of made me giggle a little bit,
Yeah,
but
it's an extended magazine.
I mean, obviously a sad headline, but it sucks. But yeah, I don't know how you're going to impose better knife control.
I mean, did he propose anything, or did he just say?
No, it was just a statement. He should, yeah.
I bet it sounds cooler in German.
Probably.
What was
Be a
it?
lot cooler if you did.
Knife and control. Knife and controlsten.
That's totally German for knife control.
The Taliban.
Yeah.
The Taliban issued a new. Have you seen Thrash talking about this in the group chat?
No.
He's like, you know what? Let him cook. Hold on. The noted gay Thrash, and I dare I say misogynist. The Taliban issued new vice laws in Afghanistan that ban women's voices and bare faces in public.
Yeah, their voices are considered too intimate, and so they can't possibly.
That was why. That was why.
Yeah, they can't
I
possibly
thought
speak
it was
in
like
public.
I don't want to listen to these women fucking talking in public.
Yeah. Do you remember when we were promised the Taliban 2.0? It was going to be the newer, nicer, better Taliban.
Yeah, they're like, you don't need to be at war with us anymore.
Yeah, and then they immediately like banned women from going to university. Yeah, schools at all.
Those were American funded. They were probably the same NGOs that killed Bin Laden. Hey, it called it back to the show open.
How about that? Isn't that something?
It is something.
I don't have much more to say about that. I'll hit the next.
I mean,
one.
it's not surprising news, right? Like every time I saw this come across my news wire, I was like, yeah. I mean, I'm glad I'm not an Afghani woman, but like this is not the first time I've had.
No, it's not surprising. I think it was
terrible. Like
it was a bit shocking to see it codified in that manner. Just like we're actually going to write this down and like
shocking.
Not shocking. It was surprising, maybe, or a little bit like. It's just you don't expect.
I believe y'all really did this.
Yeah, it's like I just didn't expect you to write it down. I don't know. I guess that's kind of more what I thought. All right, some econ stuff here. Fed Chair Jerome Powell said the time has come to start cutting interest rates during a highly anticipated speech at an annual retreat in Jackson Hole this week.
Who's Jackson?
That's Jackson Hole, Wyoming.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think they're all indicators were pointing to this anyways, but to hear him actually say that out loud in his speech is a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
Markets like that.
And like you're committed to that now. So like
yep, it's on public record.
Oh,
yeah.
Interesting.
And that's that Jackson Hole event is a huge, like all the economists like land in Jackson
central
Hole.
bankers from around the world go there for like a fucking kumbaya retreat. They go on hikes and stuff. The Economist had an embedded reporter that
I'm sure they did. Yeah.
Yeah. And he was talking about like, we went on these hikes and like, watching these guys really let loose. I was just like, fuck these guys.
I mean, this is like the equivalent of Davos, I guess, for economists. But
exactly.
All right, you want to hit number 4?
They probably chew their food really good. That's what I was referencing. Canada intervened. Why would I do that? Canada intervened in a rail stoppage. So when you last tuned into a Friday episode, we talked about how there was going to be a
strike.
strike while the rail is hot. They were going to strike a rail stoppage, and Canada intervened in a rail stoppage that could have caused significant supply chain issues, as we talked about last week. This is as grain is coming to the market with all the little piggies, by ordering binding arbitration to resolve a labor dispute. So did this break in the way of the workers or the way of the...
Well, so the workers aren't happy. The unions aren't happy about this.
No,
I mean, this is essentially the
leverage of the... This is like when Reagan didn't let the FAA workers walk off.
Or when Biden did the exact same thing to rail.
The auto workers, yeah.
No, rail. It was rail here as well.
It was rail, that's right.
Yeah, exactly the same thing. It's funny because Tim and I were talking about that because Sean Fain was at the DNC 2 weeks ago. And he was like, I don't know, man. Like, Biden kind of fucked over the railway workers. Is he really pro-union? And he's like, he did some good pro-union things, but he also...
Well, I guess when you're in that position, you can't be cut and dry, right? You have to be like, yeah, I would support this. However, this affects a lot more people than the people working there. And while I want to see you have what you're asking for, I don't want the repercussions down the market, because like, how are you going to have a good wage when the market completely
collapses?
Yeah.
So the CLRB, the Canadian...
And like, what are you left with being able to do? I'm done interrupting.
The Canadian Labor Relations Board stepped in, and they're going to be the arbiters of the negotiations between the union and the companies. So that will still happen behind the scenes while people get back to work. It's probably not great for the workers, but it's not the worst.
It'll be better than if they just had the existing arbitration that had failed, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Marginal. Take what you can get, I suppose.
Yeah. Mark Zuckerberg said in a letter to the House Judiciary Committee that Biden administration officials...
I'm so glad we're talking about this. Okay.
Repeatedly pressured Meta to censor certain COVID-19 content, while noting ultimately it was our decision whether to remove the content.
You going to talk about the content?
If so, anti-vax sort of content.
Yeah, but it was like satire stuff too. It was like...
There was definitely stuff that was...
I mean, he said in it... Did you read his letter?
Yeah. There was some of it was aimed at stuff that was intended to be comedy, essentially was intended to be funny.
But there was another thing. There was the Hunter laptop and Burisma stuff. And they were quick to throttle that down while they fact checked it. And they said, in the future, we won't down regulate the algo while we fact check. And we regret doing that now.
Well, he said that he regretted not only doing that, but he regretted not like coming public with what was happening more quickly and taking a more I guess free speech sort of stance. That he regretted not that the company didn't do that at the time. But he also said, we did ultimately make the decisions ourselves whether or not to,
Well, that's what I heard in this too, because like a lot of people sent me this because a lot of our listeners are like, "You're the conservative guy that this pisses you." And they were like, and I read the letter and I was like, this sounds like somebody who regrets the way they did that.
Yeah.
But ultimately I mean, we're talking with hindsight of 4 years, right? It's literally 4 years ago, almost to the day.
Yeah.
At the time we had been told, and he says this in the letter, we've been told that foreign countries will be attempting to,
manipulate the
misinformation into the news cycle leading into this election. And it was, I mean, you remember how it felt when you heard that story breaking. You're like, great,
sure,
this is all that shit we've been hearing about. And to an extent it was, because it came out then for a reason, right? It didn't come out months earlier when it could have, because they weren't new facts, right?
Right.
The laptop and all that stuff. And it was a blind laptop repairman. Like
that story was just crazy. Yeah.
So like at the time, it's, very questionable. And if you have the option of saying we're going to shut this down and stop it from spreading, that is a good way to prevent bad information from going around on your platform. That said, I going back to my argument earlier, I think you should have the decision to do that or not. Like, I think that, if Twitter didn't, when at the time, Dorsey was still running Twitter. Like, they all worked in unison with this because they all were getting job-owned by the U.S. government.
The New York Post story about the Biden laptop, I'm on record on the show as saying that I thought Twitter made the wrong call in stopping that.
Yeah, but wait, what are we talking about? That was the Trump administration.
That was the Trump administration.
So they're talking about shit later on then.
They're talking about shit later on.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I mean, okay, so here, like in broad strokes, the Biden administration, there's ways of reading this, and the way I read this is they pressured them. There's pressure. Wait.
Okay.
I want to distinguish something, and I want to hear.
Okay.
There's pressure and there's coercion.
Yeah.
And I don't think pressure violates free speech. I think that you should be able to be pressured and say no, like that guy did, the Duracell, whatever, the French guy.
Yeah.
Not
the Russian French guy.
Yeah. I mean, that guy left Russia for a reason, by the way. Just go back to an old subject. But so that guy was being pressured and said, fuck off. And then now they're coercing him, right?
Yeah.
Nobody coerced Zuckerberg. He was pressured and made these decisions. And he says, if I'm pressured again, I'm going to stand my ground better. And I think that that's an example of you live, you learn. And I don't think you're going to be able to look back at all this and be like, well, obviously Trump was right. Like,
Right. So I agree with that. The point I was going to make was that, to your point, it wasn't just the Biden administration. It was the Trump administration did the same shit. It was the Obama administration did the same shit.
Yes.
So
companies are always being pressured by the government.
Yes, that's what they do.
And
now
we can find ways to be mad at them about that, but they don't always rise to the level of violating free speech.
Right. Now, and there's definitely been I've read some transcripts of some of these emails that the language used was not professional. Yeah, it was pretty strong.
Yeah.
And the problem is that typically you have like a quid pro quo situation where, like, if you don't do this, I'm going to do that kind of situation, and that's where your coercion comes into the.
But there wasn't that happening, right?
There wasn't that.
But it was like into that. It was like, if you don't do this might happen.
Well, one could argue that
that's always on the table when the government's talking to you, especially in a sector that has not yet been regulated.
Right.
That is at fear of regulation. Because that's, I mean, and that's basically what they cowered to, right? It's like, we do not regulate your sector. You're worried that someday we will, unless 230, gets.
Be a shame if something happened in Section 230. That's kind of the mob way to say it.
And I don't, like, do not mistake me for being, on the government side with this. I just think I can understand Zuck in his shoes saying they made a point. I think I like their point. And then 4 years later being like, you know what, if I'm ever in that position again, I'm not going to do that. And that's what you would hope for.
Or even not that I would necessarily decide differently, but I would be more public about my stance. I would say, look, they're telling me to do this, and I'm not. I disagree with what they're telling me to do.
Why would that make a difference?
Because that public awareness matters, especially in these sort of situations. Like the way the public.
So you'd be like, government's trying to pressure me. You'd be like, by the way, government, I'm about to tell everybody that you're doing.
That's what he said. He said we would be more public about it. I would come forward.
I didn't read that as that, but I'm hearing it from you now. Yeah.
So, and I'm totally fine with all of that. So
yeah. So I feel like this was a good thing.
I think so too.
Everybody said
this was in response.
We finally got him. It's like, well, there was a lawsuit about this. That lawsuit didn't work out because they said they didn't have standing. It's not like it got proven.
Right. But there weren't any even veiled sort of threats. I mean, my point earlier is that
there was just bad language.
Right. The government is always the government. And because of the amount of power they wield, it's almost like the shadow is always there, whether they say it or not.
Yeah.
But they never said it. So
you agree it didn't arise to the level of coercion?
I do. I agree. Yeah.
But the government pressures companies. Like, I'd love to live in the fantasy world where they don't. Like, sure. But like under both parties, the government will pressure companies.
Yeah.
And I have accepted that a long time ago. And that didn't change because it was on a subject that's a hot button issue.
Yes. Agreed.
All
right. 16.
That really well. I've been looking forward to talking about that. A New Hampshire resident died. Oh, this is fun. Died from a mosquito-borne Eastern equine encephalitis. Triple E.
Say that 3 times fast.
Eastern equine. No, I'm not gonna. Marking the first death in the U.S. from the rare but deadly virus this year. Wait, can I read that better? A New Hampshire resident died from.
Hamster?
What did I say?
You said hamster.
I don't think so.
Like the tiny, cute rodent.
That goes up Richard Gere's butt.
Right, that one, yeah.
No, I don't think so. The New Hampshire resident died from mosquito-borne Eastern equine encephalitis, marking the first death in the U.S. from the rare but deadly virus this year, amid concerns of elevated risk in New England. So, what I'm hearing is there is a regional health concern about mosquitoes giving you some kind of horse encephalitis.
Yes. And
Mr. Hands better watch out. He doesn't have to worry about that old horse cock. He's got, encephalitis to look out for.
And the this year part is also important. So
so other people have died from this before.
Yes. And
This
it
is
tends
like
to pop up.
Zika virus.
Zika.
Whatever happened to Zika virus?
I don't know. You don't hear about it anymore.
So
this tends to pop up every decade or two in that region. And it has a 30% mortality rate, which is crazy.
What's normal encephalitis? I'm going to look up normal encephalitis.
It attacks your central nervous system, your brain. Pretty nasty. It's pretty nasty virus. So yeah, it is mosquito borne. I looked into it a little bit. I couldn't find a reason why it seems to be cyclical. Every time
Wait, so what do you mean by that? Like, so every few years
every 10 to 20 years it seems to like pop up. So I don't know if that's climate related, like perhaps because it's a warmer year, maybe there's more mosquitoes and they're interacting with horses more or something. I don't know what. I couldn't locate it.
Herpes simplex encephalitis.
Did not
That's
know
the
that.
most common type of encephalitis with a fatality rate of 1 in 5 even treated. That can't be the same as
regular herpes.
Yeah, regular herpes. I was going to say lip herpes. Yeah.
So yeah,
40%. Encephalitis is a big deal.
Yeah, it's bad, dude. Well, anything that
how
attacks
do you normally? I'm going to look up how you normally get it.
Anything that attacks your central nervous system and your brain, that's not good. So yeah, like I said, I Googled around a bit and I couldn't find any reason for the cyclicality of it, but it seems to pop up every 10 or 20 years in sort of the northeastern region, like Massachusetts, New Hampshire, etc.
It's normally transmitted by mosquitoes and ticks.
Yeah.
So this is just horse related. This is anti-horse propaganda. People been getting encephalitis. This is just, specific.
It's very specific.
It's
All right.
It's one New Hampshire guy.
I think we've beat that horse enough.
I thought the horse is fine.
Probably.
Horse. NASA. Oh, no, your turn.
Oh, we did have this, and I put this in other news because you sent me the text. I forgot I actually was in. Okay.
Well, is this the one? Oh, yeah, they decided to pause.
Yeah, NASA decided to hold 2 astronauts on the ISS until February. And
you didn't open the link, silly goose.
No, I did.
No, you didn't. Read this one. The other one's different.
Really?
Yeah, I will tell you what to do. You read this, young
man. Okay. And to use a SpaceX capsule for the return due to issues with Boeing Starliner.
Start from the beginning. I'm done. I'm done being director of show.
Due to issues with Boeing Starliner.
Not to start over. NASA.
No, I refuse.
It's important. It's a distinction between the other one that you've conflated with this one. You want me to read this?
Sure.
NASA, the government space agency, which is not to be confused with a commercial space agency.
National Aeronautics and Space Agency.
NASA decided to hold 2 astronauts on ISIS until Friday. February. And to use a SpaceX capsule for their return.
SpaceX.
Boeing Starliner capsule. Yeah. And give all your little facts that you like to talk about when you read your news.
So it was supposed to be an 8-day trip.
Yeah.
And now it's
tour. Now it's going to be February.
Now it's going to be 8 months.
So imagine like Gilligan up there,
right?
Fucking things up, and there's like one professor getting mad at everybody.
They don't even have the hot chick.
Either of the hot chicks,
right? So,
who are you more of, a Ginger or a Mary? I am. That's a question I haven't heard in 15 years.
Oh wow, I don't even remember. I guess Ginger.
Ginger's the redhead.
Yeah,
I think Ginger's the easy answer.
Yeah.
All
right. So
on that, and I feel like when I was a kid, I liked Ginger. Then I like Mary Ann more, and now I go back to Ginger. Yeah. A little more showgirl,
Okay. So
Girl Next Door is overrated.
I like a
Girl Next Door. You end up being like, I went to high school with this chick. What the fuck was I thinking? Could have met some exotic,
Yeah.
someone's been around the block before and knows a thing or two about the whole, you know what I mean?
The whole I'm not going to do it.
Oh.
So there were a shit ton of problems with the Boeing
I'm a
space
very sexy lady.
Okay, I'm done.
the Boeing space capsule going up. They're like
Starliner, yeah, the fucking door capsule blew off.
the thrusters weren't firing correctly. They were
Oh,
leaking.
really?
Yeah, they were leaking helium and shit. Like didn't know why.
You want to keep your helium inside.
You definitely want to keep that inside. Yeah, there was a shit ton of problems.
What are you, the sun? It's just leaking helium. What do you think you are, the sun?
So essentially, they decided, hey, like we're not going to risk it for a biscuit. We're not going to risk sending these astronauts back in this same capsule that had all these issues getting there. And
Just had a faulty heat tile. What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty complicated to get to space, as it turns out, and so any sort of failure is problematic. But there were many failures on the trip there.
Let's not move past the B word in this story.
The
Fucking
Boeing,
yeah.
yeah. So these companies had been competing, Boeing and SpaceX, and so the U.S. government had sort of taken a stance of we're going to use both of you. And so the problem is that yes, but SpaceX has been so much more reliable and actually functional than Boeing. It's kind of like
see that Falcon 9 fall over on its platform and blow up.
I did see that, yeah. But even all beyond that, it's still been more reliable than the Boeing version.
Sure.
So
yeah, for sure.
So they're like, yeah, we're not going to use that to go back. We're going to have them use the SpaceX one instead, and that's going to take a while to get there and come back down.
Yeah,
so that's
Boeing is fucking up, man. They really should not have split the engineers from the manufacturing. Like that was like anybody who knows that history. They were like, you know what? The investors don't like the way you guys talk. We're going to take all of our management and put them in Chicago. You nerds can live over here in Washington and make your little planes. And we're going to listen.
Maybe
to
not the best idea to separate those people.
Turns out it was not the best idea.
So what was different about the?
Why don't you get to that story?
What was different about
the link? I don't know. We got to get to other news first.
Okay. In other news, so I'm sorry.
Did you delete it? Is it still in the sheet?
Yeah, it's it's.
I don't think you have it here.
Oh,
okay, I'll talk about it. So there was going to be a commercial space flight. So not the same as NASA.
Okay.
And it was going to be the first commercial space flight to include a spacewalk. It was a private space flight. And they were going to like go up into space, spend 3 days depressurizing or whatever the words are, and then do a spacewalk. It'll be the first spacewalk by a commercial space flight organization. And then they were going to return and splash down to Earth. And they were going to use a Falcon 9, and they started noticing leaks on the launch pad, and they said, we're going to hold off for a couple of days. So very different than NASA leaving their astronauts up in space, but also Jesus, like there's a lot going on here.
I think what happened was
What?
I opened that headline and I scanned it.
Yeah.
Like just kind of, and I was like, oh, I know the story. And then I think that's what happened. All right.
I like giving you shit. I get told I don't argue with you enough on the internet.
Yeah, I'm sure you get told that all the time. Kevin in Nashville, likes it. Yeah.
And then he's like, after he motherfucks me all day, he's like, hey, I'm at D's tonight. I'm like, who are you?
I kind of want you to meet him, see what he's like.
You know what? I have met him. I didn't know it though. He was like, yeah, I was the door guy at Roberts like 2 years ago. I was like, well, then I saw you. Like,
yeah, but you didn't really like meet him.
Yeah. Oh, he's gonna be friendly. Like he thinks he's being funny.
All right, first headline here: Trump staff had physical altercation with Arlington Cemetery officials. So we talked about this on the Wednesday
I have
show.
A couple of audio elements, if you're okay with me adding them. Just let me know when to play them.
Sure. So the story here is that so some of the families of people who had family members die at the pullout from Afghanistan did invite Trump to be there. However, not all of them did. And there was some pushback about him being there in the first place. And apparently there was an altercation between an individual. I believe this individual was somebody that actually worked there.
This is somebody that worked for Arlington National Cemetery.
Yes.
You were permitted to have cameras there at section 60 or section 50. I don't know
You're not permitted to like stage a political event.
Well, two things. You're allowed to have cameras in this one area where we said, okay, you can do that today.
Right.
And two, you're not able to use them in a way that can be used as a political campaigning event.
Right.
Political purposes.
And so this individual attempted to stop this from happening.
Yeah. Basically doing their job, being like, hey, you're not allowed to do that.
You can't do that. And so there was some pushing and verbal altercations.
Bald eagle out front should have told you.
Yeah. All right. So go ahead and I guess let's go.
This is former defense secretary under Donald Trump, Mark Esper. The guy that taught us about the suckers and losers.
Section 60, which is the burial site for service members recently lost. Apparently, this visit turned into some kind of physical incident. And it sounds like people who were on the staff of the cemetery were trying to block a Trump campaign photographer from going over and taking pictures of Trump there at the cemetery.
They had approval for a certain manner of taking these pictures, but the way that he was trying to get a photo
violated that.
A photo op, right?
Yeah.
Your reaction to that? I mean, my understanding from visiting Arlington National Cemetery, I was looking at the website this morning. I mean, they have a lot of rules and restrictions prohibiting election-related activity there. What was your reaction when you saw this?
Yeah, I saw the breaking news this morning about this, the story that came out. It's important that, a report was filed. I think it should be investigated. We should find out. During my tenure as Secretary of the Army, I was kind of the so-called custodian of Arlington Cemetery, since the Army has responsibility for it. And there is no more hallowed ground in this nation than Arlington Cemetery, where we've been burying our heroes, our veterans, since the Civil War. So, look, I think bottom line, the principle is that no person or party either side should ever use Arlington National Cemetery or any of our cemeteries or battlefields for partisan political purposes and or break the so-called rules. We need to maintain its prominence, its importance, its sacredness to the American people.
Like if there's any fucking place to have decorum, it's there, right?
Yeah. And I kind of already, I this genuinely pissed me off, and I kind of expressed myself on the last show.
Oh, I got all yelly, and you got all like emotional in a way that I didn't know how to respond to. Like,
I told you, I think
the last show, because I was like, Alan got.
Yeah, I was because I've been pissed off about the way he's treated military personnel for a long time.
And you probably have a common feeling about that, where it's like, look, I don't know how I'm supposed to react to him pissing me off about that because I didn't serve, but I know it pisses me off. But I don't know how to express that in a manner.
I mean, going back to McCain, the way he's, he said, I like my.
And man, you don't like McCain.
Well, I actually kind of did like McCain.
Okay, fine, we can argue.
But like, so I'm not going to do that again. But the whole thing was just shitty and awful, and I'm glad that came out of me. And I'm glad to have received some feedback about it from people who have served and appreciated it. So I'll say that.
Do you think that our friend would mind if I read something he sent me privately?
I don't think so. Just don't name.
Yeah. I like what you said, but hearing Alan's frustration in his voice was very powerful. I know he was invited by a couple of families, Trump.
Yeah.
Wouldn't have been a problem if he just went and mourned with the families.
Yeah.
But to walk all over the sacrifice of the fallen for a shitty fucking grin and a thumbs up, fuck him. My dead brothers and sisters, my friends, they didn't die for that. And my shitty response to him was like, at first I addressed the fact that I didn't know how to respond when Alan actually, displayed emotion. You normally have decorum, Alan. Very demure, to use the word of 2 weeks ago. But I did say to him, it's like he actually took a bad thing and made it worse.
Yeah, it was just horrible. All right, I think let's.
There was another clip that I'm not going to play, but it was just the secretary basically saying, "Look, it's up to the Army to press charges." Because look, there's two things that happened. One, the person was pushed out of the way, which in the lighthearted, fancy-free definition of the term is assault, right?
Right.
Like in California, you could sue somebody over this. You know what I'm saying, Alan? You know what I mean?
In many states, you can.
Yeah. That person chose not to, likely because they didn't want the pushback from all the MAGA stands, right?
Yeah.
The Army could still press charges over the violation of the rules of the cemetery for the fallen. Like this is, a somber area, right?
Yeah.
They've chosen not to. And there was a deputy press secretary who's, I must say, quite fetching. I wish she would have to answer questions more often. And she was basically saying that the Army has decided not to press those charges. And then the member of the press kept saying, well, why doesn't the DOJ, what's his name?
DOD. Oh, wait.
DOD. Well,
Was it DOD?
someone could supersede that and say, like, we do actually want to press charges. And why haven't they? Because it is a clear violation of a rule, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would understand
I understand passing on it.
the desire just to move on, and
I do too. I do too.
Yeah.
I also, as a reporter, would understand pushing that to get a real answer out of something.
Sure. Yeah.
And I, you didn't have to hear the clip. That's a summary of it. I think that's why you have press interviews and spokespeople. This wasn't Karine Jean-Pierre going up there and Pataski, what's her name?
Jen
Psaki flipping through her binder. This was a person actually engaging with the press and saying why. And I don't know. Sometimes government looks functional, and I appreciate it. Okay, whatever you want to talk about. We're doing great on time.
Sweet. Okay, so next headline is Iran's supreme leader opens door to negotiations with U.S. over Tehran's nuclear program. So he had a statement where he said that there was no harm in engaging with its enemy.
How about fouls? Were there any fouls?
He didn't engage with fouls. I'm
They
not
even
sure.
have fouls there in terms of ducks, and
they must, right?
They must have ducks. Yeah.
I know they're having a heat wave over there. They're like hitting 120, 130 degrees.
Really?
Yeah. It's pretty bad apparently.
Well, you have unrest, Alan.
This is true. So, I mean, we have their new sort of reformist president, Masoud Pezeshkian.
You
however,
did a better job than the guy that does anti-war radio. He always struggles with it. It's like, I don't know. It ends in IAN. Like, it's going to be IAN.
Yeah, that's pretty much count on that. So, I mean, the supreme leader says sort of cryptic things often, and people interpret them. It's almost like the Fed chair saying something.
Yeah, it is like the Fed chair. Yes.
Yeah. However, I mean, this isn't bad news. He also said, I think, in the same statement that don't trust the enemy either.
That was kind of weird, right? Like, so this wasn't. Okay, so he's talking about the Great Satan. It's the guy that says the Great Satan said that.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, please.
I mean, to be honest, why would you trust? I mean,
if you were them,
yeah, given what we did with the nuclear agreement and then Trump backing out of it, like, I don't know, why would you want to re-engage? So, I mean, this isn't bad news, and I think basically our diplomats have responded in saying, look, we would like to solve these things politically as opposed to kinetically, so we're always open to talks. And so maybe this is an opening. We'll see. But neither side trusts the other, and probably shouldn't. So that's where we are there. Okay. This was funny.
Wait, hold on. Do you think that that's actually going to lead to something? Because that sounds promising.
I think it's better than where we were before.
Are we falling back into the cycle we were at before, where sometimes things look positive?
I think definitely we're in a better space just with that one sentence than we were the minute before he said that sentence.
He's not going to be there forever, right? And the new president is they vacillate between reformist and hardliners, and they're back to reformist. So this is the scenario where you start to see a thawing of relations. Except the problem is everything that we're supporting Israel with in the Middle East is over. The enemies of that conflict are all of the proxies of our. We are in a war with Iran via Israel and Palestine.
Yeah, and Hezbollah, Yemen, Hamas, or the Houthis, Hamas. Yeah. So that definitely puts a pale on any of this moving forward positively. But I mean, I'll take it. I'm not like super hopeful, but it's something.
Okay.
I'll take it. All right, this was funny. This is in Oregon.
Oregon.
After backlash, Oregon nonprofit says state-funded home buyer assistance doesn't exclude U.S. citizens.
Okay, tell me all about this, because there's another one in California too, and it's the time of year of the election cycle where they're like, immigrants, illegals, Look at these dumb liberals.
So Oregon had passed a bill providing funding for some of these agencies to help people attain home ownership. And so one of these agencies, which had been given some of this money, had come up with a program. There were 5 different reasons that you could apply for this program, and you had to have 2 of them to be considered. And that's beyond being able to actually be approved for a loan to buy a home, and all of that. So one of those 5 things was if you were not a U.S. citizen. There was another one about not being proficient in the English language, and there were 3 others. Somebody made a flyer from this organization wherein they said that this was only
Oregonization.
Yes,
I'm sorry.
They said that this program was only for non-U.S. citizens, and so people saw that and flipped the fuck out.
Wait, that was the whole story?
Essentially. And that wasn't true, but that was one of the contingencies that could get you in the club, essentially. But yeah,
well, no, we want to make sure that these non-citizens are homeless. Is what I mean. I guess that's the opposite of that, right?
Right.
Okay.
So there was a huge backlash. The Republicans in Oregon really seized on this and tried to make it a really big deal. It was essentially an oopsie, I guess. It was a pretty big oopsie. I'm not gonna like if you saw that, you'd be like, what the fuck? What does that mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, you can apply for this program as a U.S. citizen as well. You just have to tick 2 of the other boxes that are available. So
That's that. You know what? I appreciate that. Yeah, I it smelled fishy, but it's also potentially very Oregon.
Well, yeah. So it was to provide culturally responsive services to support economic stability, self-sufficiency, wealth building, and economic equity among disadvantaged individuals, families, businesses, and communities in the state. That was what the funding was supposed to be there for. The 5 economic equity risk factors included citizenship status, experience of discrimination because of race or ethnicity, English language proficiency, socioeconomic status, or residence or operation in a rural location. So,
if you got rid of one of those, that seems like a pretty good program.
Yeah, I think it's
maybe they could have got their head out of their ass and made a decent program.
Yeah, somebody decided to
because now it's gone. It got scrapped, right? They pulled the plug on that. They did.
Yeah, they did. Yeah. All right. Should we hit all of these?
Yeah, whatever you feel like. I don't care.
Okay.
I can smell Natasha cooking. I'm hungry.
Kamala can't hold office because of slavery. I'll just hit these quickly.
Kamala, listen to you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Jesus Christ.
Thank you.
It's late in the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
Kamala can't hold office because slavery. So there is
This is so good. This is so good. This is people being like, look at how well I know the Constitution. I've read every decision the Supreme Court ever made, and this lady is a black. According to Dred Scott, she can't hold office. Is that the whole story?
Yes. That is the whole story. Yeah. In fact, that's good enough.
That was it. They're like, well,
Trump,
according to the Dred Scott's decision, this black can't run for president because they're not citizens.
But the way they're saying it, though, is they're like, well, we're just taking the position that Clarence Thomas takes, which is that just because you're born in this country doesn't mean you have citizenship rights. Clearly, we're citing Dred
I'm
Scott.
not racist. I like Clarence Thomas.
Yeah. That's what they
Some
say.
of my best friends are black.
Whoa. Trump blames Biden-Harris for lack of protection. So in the interview, that Dr. Phil interview, he said that he believed that, didn't believe, he just said that his campaign had asked for additional security and that Biden and Harris had said no, which is not true. He also said that, we talked about this previously, but he said it again. Actually, Vance had said it before, and now he's saying it, is that Democratic rhetoric was what riled up this guy to try and kill him.
Okay.
All right, this next one, roast of Kamala. Did I say it right? Yeah. At the University of South Carolina. So
Lean
this
into the funny name or don't. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
To be fair, I've never heard her complaining about it. So
yeah,
it's all it's being like, how dare you?
So this student group at the University of South Carolina had decided to put on
funny names. Are you going to get to the names involved in this?
Well,
All right, I'll stop. Natasha gets mad at me for interrupting so much.
they decided to put on this event, a roast of Kamala Harris. Some of the speakers scheduled to attend were Milo Yiannopoulos, which
Milo Yiannopoulos, who is not somebody who should start a thing about picking on people in regarding names.
I
Like,
thought he had disappeared into the ether. I hadn't heard about him in
yeah,
a while.
Yep.
Also, Gavin McGinnis,
founder of the Proud Boys.
Yes.
Back when they were cool, Alan.
was supposed to speak at this event.
Back before that Mexican got a hold of the organization. Am I right? Back before
Enrique?
Enrique
Tario. So some people got wind of this and decided to start a petition to prevent this from happening. It, as what the article said, like less than 3,000 people have signed on to this. So I don't know if it's gotten traction. The university stands. No, there was 3,000 people that signed a petition to stop this from happening. Less than like 2,500 or something.
You should let them. Like if I was a Democrat, I'd be like,
you should let them. I agree.
Yeah.
The university's response was, "This is a private event. We're not sponsoring it. The student organization.
That's what universities are for.
Yeah, the student organization has the right to do that, and we're not going to stop.
Here's the rope. Do whatever you want with it.
Go ahead.
Oh, throwing a noose. That's interesting. Who are you going to use that on?
It's an odd choice, but you know, do your thing.
Yeah.
Okay, this last one, just real quick. I saw this headline and it kind of, I don't know if you've seen the pictures, but dead fish in Greece. They had a heat wave in Greece, and there's this river outside this tourist location where there's just like thousands of dead fish, like on the shoreline. There's just this mass. It's
like a big fish die off. You see this in like Asia for some reason. Like
I don't think I've ever seen one this large. It's pretty, like, it's heinous to look at.
And it's like you see the waves are happening on the shore, and it's just like a fish wave, right?
That in this picture I saw was just
I've seen that with other fish die.
Okay, yeah, but it's just massive. So they're trying to clear it out and have them incinerated because because you can't do anything with them. You don't want to leave them there. They're going to poison the environment. So they got to get them out, and it's a tourist area, and so they're losing business because nobody wants to go sit on the beach next to a million dead fish. So just
crazy. How can you tell the difference?
Hi, Tosh. Another. So this is the climate caused as well. And so that's happening.
Dude, so they've determined it's climate caused.
They believe it's from heat wave.
Okay. I mean, I know they often say that's what these are from, but you said heat wave. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's what, like the plankton dies, they don't have anything to eat, and all this fish die. A lot of times it has to do with like schools going into the wrong location and not being fit for that area or whatever. But
I mean, even
any of this, I'm not going to act like I do.
Even relatively small, what we would think is small temperature changes can impact an entire ecosystem in a really negative way. So and a lot of times it will be something small at the bottom of the ecosystem that, that's the problem first. And then all of a sudden you see at upper levels of that ecosystem start to collapse as well.
Okay. Are we on to what we've been watching?
Yeah.
What's the media diet?
So actually, this is a podcast I listened to. It's called The Gas Man. And essentially
I'm the gas man.
So an FBI agent back in the 80s, something came across his desk where he found there was an American company selling massive quantities of a certain chemical component to an overseas other overseas company.
Oh.
This chemical compound is used typically in pen manufacturing, like to manufacture the ink.
Like Pen 15?
No, like a Bic. Okay. They use this chemical to manufacture the ink. I think it stabilizes it or something.
Okay.
However, it can also be used to make mustard gas.
Oh, mustard. Isn't that just chlorine and
this was a very specific chemical and there actually were restrictions on selling it to other places. So he came across this invoice of this American company selling like massive quantities of this chemical to a foreign agent. Starts digging around. Turns out it's this German guy.
Of course it is. Jesus.
Who's buying it and selling it like to Iraq and Iran for them to make mustard gas in the 80s because they're fighting each other.
Selling it to an Austrian.
So it's that whole story. I thought it was really interesting.
That's a podcast series?
Yeah, I think it's 8 episodes long.
Yeah, would I want to listen? I'm totally down to listen to that. Okay.
Yeah, worth it.
The Gas Man.
The Gas Man.
Okay. come together with your hands. Are you done? Is that what you've
Yes,
been
I
watching?
am.
Okay. I already told you what I've been watching, but I want to talk about it a little bit more in detail because I don't want you to watch this.
Okay.
So I watched a movie called An American Haunting. It is from the early 2000s, mid 2000s. I don't have a year. That's fine. Doesn't matter. When Donald Sutherland was still alive, him and Sissy Spacek did a movie about 1817 Tennessee haunting, not far from my house, where Lucy Bell and John Bell were haunted by a witch. One thing about this that I didn't really say when I talked about this briefly in the Big Show was that witches don't just like talk to you like a detached voice, and that's what this story is about. There's like this voice that's like, get out of my house type thing, and that's not what a witch does. Like a witch is like, I have a cauldron, I have a broom. You don't like this, lady in your neighborhood who's probably a lesbian before you were tolerant of strange women, right? Like, do you get what I'm talking about? Like,
Yeah, totally.
like there's witches and then there's spirits, and they completely
conflate.
conflated it. Yes, yeah. And when we talk about this haunting, this was the type of haunting that spread around the world, and people like traveled from Europe at the time where you would have to like get in
Get
a
on a
wagon,
boat.
go and get in a boat,
Yeah.
come to Tennessee in 1817, get in a wagon and go to the middle of Tennessee from North Carolina or wherever you ported at, and just to go look at this cabin, and get bit by mosquitoes and be like, this is where they yelled at the people.
Wow.
You go in that cave, they'll scratch you, and like the movie is as convincing as the story when you're on the tour of the house. It's just like nothing fucking happens other than like scream scares. Like there isn't like a thing where it's like, oh, that unbelievable, terrifying visual happened. It's just like someone screamed and it startled you. That's the biggest rise it'll get out of you. I'm on the Rotten Tomatoes page and saw something. A bad movie that I assure you is a waste of your time. I can read the rest of that review in Spanish if I want. Frights are few and moments of horrific revelation is a big letdown. I will say that. So the movie starts off with a modern day person who feels like they're being haunted and they live in the same house, which the house is torn down. Like the house is torn down. That's a part of the real story. So I don't know how that makes sense. And then it goes back in time the entire rest of the movie. For like 5 minutes, it's modern day. And then for the rest of the movie, it happens back in time. And I keep turning to Natasha and Chelsea being like, whatever happened to that broad in the future? Like, are they ever going to get back to that? And then they resolve it. And then they go back to the future. And this woman's like reading the letter. It's like Princess Bride, how they're reading it. And that's how they tell the story. And then it goes back. She finishes the letter. She's like, oh my God, the father was a child abuser. And that was the story. And you're like, well, we learned that a few minutes ago in the story. Like, why are we still telling this? And then it just ends. And if you look, it's like 90 minutes long, which is like right at the cusp of what the minimum is to be required to be a full like motion picture
movie.
Yeah. It's just
Wow.
it's bad. I don't recommend An American Haunting, even if you're, some kind of sadist that likes watching bad, scary movies. It's not scary. It's not scary. That's the other thing. It's not scary, right? And then we watched Land of the Lost again at Chelsea's recommendation. Josh, if you're listening, you need to get on Chelsea's fucking movie recommendations. But the way she sold it was, you haven't seen Land of the Lost? I mean, it's Will Ferrell. If you get high and watch it, you're going to enjoy yourself. And I was like, well, I've got the supplies for this. A long day.
I have the gear. Yeah.
Don't say gear, Alan. I'm not doing H up in this house, I'm not booting black tar heroin. So anyways, I watched Land of the Lost and I don't have anything to tell you about that movie. I don't remember. Like it was I think that one thing that's like a monkey man, he like humps things. That was kind of funny. It was Will Ferrell in the 2010, early 2010s, late 2000s. I don't know. Don't
Sounds
recommend
terrible.
Land of the Lost. I mean, if you haven't watched it till now and someone tries to talk you into it, don't
Say
fall
no.
for it. Yeah,
Got it.
it was fine. I have a game for you.
Okay.
It's a reincarnation
Okay.
of an old favorite. It's
Oh.
not Carper Narp.
Oh no.
I think one of the last times we had Carper Narp was episode 300, which means we've done 100 episodes almost since we've done officially.
Wow. Yeah, those
tribute.
Fritz.
That feels like it was just yesterday.
It does.
This one was
Yeah.
inspired by young thrash lad, noted misogynist young thrash lad. Trout or doe.
Oh, all right, all right.
I'm going to introduce to you 3 fish.
Yeah.
By name only.
Okay.
And you have to determine if they are trout or if, in fact, there is doubt around whether they are trout. And they are
Oh, so they could be a trout, but science isn't necessarily.
You're reading way too far into it, but we'll go
Okay.
with that. So I have a Dolly Varden.
Okay.
You're gonna find the trout.
So 2 are not, and 1 is.
2 are not trout. 1 is trout.
Okay.
And I'm certain of it this time.
Okay.
Because turns out this game is way too specific because most things are called trouts.
Mm.
They're rainbow trout, cutthroat trout, like there's all kinds of trout, but there's not a lot of things that are just called a name. Unlike carp, where you get goldfish, right?
Right.
So a Dolly Varden.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want you to search for this because I'm afraid it'll say, you know, whether this is a trout or not.
I won't. I'm not going to search. Okay.
So a Dolly Varden,
Mm-hmm.
a splake,
Okay.
or an Arctic char.
So only one of those that I've ever even heard of is the Arctic char.
Oh,
I've heard that name before. I don't know if it's a trout. I want to say it's not, because trout are freshwater only, right?
No, there's trout. There's
okay.
No.
Okay.
No, I've read a lot about this. Yeah, there's
okay. All right.
there's trout that live in the
ocean.
Yes, freshwater trout is a word. So
so there's also saltwater trout. Okay, that would make sense. Okay. All right. So I'll say the Arctic is a trout then. And I'm trying to find
You're gonna say the Arctic char is a trout.
So I'm trying to find the trout, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That is
it
literally
a flake, or is it a Dolly Varden, or is it an Arctic char?
I'm gonna go with the only one I've ever heard of, which is the Arctic char.
You're gonna call that a trout?
Sure.
You fucking idiot. It's a char. It says it in the name. It's an Arctic char.
Well,
the other char on this list is a Dolly Varden, which is also a char. The only one that's a trout is the splake, obviously.
Obviously, that's a splake.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I will. The reason this was difficult is because char and trout are very similar.
Very similar.
Yeah, they're cousins. They come from, you know, whatever phylum, barely knew them, you know, whatever sub genre of that is.
All right. Well, that was fun. Thanks, Thresh.
Yeah. I will instead of leaving you with like a funny question, I'll tell you a funny thing that happened before the show, and then I'll stop the show. I got to find my button to end the show.
Okay.
When we updated the button, it has Trump's pee-pee in it now. It has this one in it.
Trump's pee-pee.
It makes me giggle. Yeah, we got a new end of show montage. But you know, going into the show, I was like, man, we haven't had a game in a bit. And I was like, well, let's bring back Teddy Time.
Oh, yeah, that was fun.
It's been a couple of years since we've really done Teddy
Yeah.
Time. So we have a lot of new listeners by then. So Teddy Time, we used to give 3 quotes, 2 from Noam Chomsky, 1 from Ted Kaczynski, and Alan had to find the Teddy quote in it.
Right.
Teddy Time was a lot of fun. You'd be surprised how much Noam Chomsky sounds.
There's a
like
lot of overlap.
There's a lot of overlap.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
I figured, you know, it's been a lot of technological advancements since the last time we did this game. Why don't I find one of these disreputable AIs and see if they can get on the case, right?
Oh.
So I went to Claude. Actually, should I read to you? I went to Claude, and Claude just wouldn't even do it. Claude was like,
just refused.
not. Yeah, I actually, hold on. That's the one I want to read to you. I took a screenshot of it.
That
This
is outside of my parameters.
It's better than that.
Okay.
So this is me. Help me make a trivia game. I want, you know, I'm trying to appeal to it. And I've heard if you're not polite, they're more likely to like do what you say.
No. Oh, okay.
Yeah. No, if you're not polite, they're like, oh shit, they're being mean. Because the whole thing, because you say it's not AI, it's LLMs, right? And LLMs kind of are derivative of, we found out that chatbots work on people by acting mean and getting them to engage. So I think like downstream from that is the ability, like
that would make sense.
If you're kind of pushy with them, they'll do it. But I don't want to get too pushy. When these machines take over, they're gonna remember. Yeah. You think my stepdad doesn't forget? This guy's gonna fucking be mad at me. He's gonna remember my IP and fucking drone stroke me. So I said, help me make a trivia game. I want 3 quotes. One of them from Ted Kaczynski. The other 2 are Noam Chomsky. I apologize, but I don't feel comfortable creating a trivia game featuring quotes from Ted Kaczynski or reproducing his writings. Perhaps we could explore trivia designed on a different topic. What are you doing? I don't want a different topic. I have the topic I asked you about. Maybe perhaps we could, she's not going to fucking finesse me on this. Perhaps we could explore designing a trivia game on a different topic that doesn't risk promoting harmful ideologies or extremist views. Like Noam Chomsky's not out here saying a bunch of fucking Marxist bullshit.
I mean, an AI would say that.
Yeah. Well, but why didn't it pick out Noam Chomsticks with his bullshit?
Anti-technology also.
Yeah. Okay. I'd be happy to suggest some alternative trivia schemes that could be both fun and educational if you're interested. And you know what I said to that?
Nope.
I don't think Teddy would be comfortable with you doing that either.
When a guy's banging you,
Y'all let me in his damn house.
oh, how about that?
Come in the name of peace.
LMFAO.
So what in the world is this?
Trump's pee-pee.
Why would you say something that stupid?
I come without explanations or solutions.
I'm a very sexy lady.
Cat turd.
I will not suffer this harlot. How great! An anti-American Marxist.
Ted Cruz, go fuck yourself.
Read the news.
China is asshole.
God bless the United States.
Now this is podcasting.
Drive safe, man. Have a great weekend.
Cheers.
Cheers.